Welcome, everyone, to this week's ADDitude Magazine's ADHD Experts webinar broadcast. Whether you are taking part in the live webinar today or listening to the webinar replay or podcast a few days or weeks from now, you'll find today's topic, relationship advice for ADHD couples during the pandemic, of great interest. Before we get started, let me note a couple of housekeeping items. Those of you tuned into the live webinar may download the slides now by clicking on the Event Resources tab of your webinar screen. For new information on how to choose a certificate of attendance option, look for instructions in the email you'll receive directly at the end of the webinar. For those of you listening to this broadcast in replay or podcast mode, please log on to the webinar replay page on the ADDitude website. That URL is www.additude.com/webinar/marriage-counseling. Well, that was a mouthful. Sorry, guys. For access to both the accompanying slides and access to the certificate of attendance option. Now for today's topic. COVID-related stress and routine disruptions have caused many adults to feel exhausted and hopeless in their ADHD-impacted relationships. Tried and true coping strategies for both partners now seem inadequate. Higher stress leads to more severe ADHD symptoms, and routines that used to provide structure have been cast aside. Right now, you may be asking, is this person for me? Spending so much time together during the pandemic has led to relationship breakdowns. Many spouses feel disappointed that their partner was not there for them in the way they had hoped. So how do you answer those questions as you slowly move away from the stay-at-home to out and about? How do you heal your relationship as you move into the next phase of your lives together? Melissa Orlov is here to give us her best advice, ideas, and insights for rehabbing a relationship after all the stresses that COVID has placed on couples. Melissa is a marriage consultant specializing in helping ADHD-affected couples rebalance their relationships. She is a cum laude graduate of Harvard College and the author of the award-winning books, The ADHD Effect on Marriage and The Couple's Guide to Thriving with ADHD. She blogs for ADHDmarriage.com and Psychology Today, and of course, writes for ADDitude. You can ask questions of Melissa during her presentation, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can after she finishes. And that's it for the housekeeping. That all being said, I'll turn it over to Melissa for today's webinar.
Thank you so much, Wayne, and I am delighted to be here. I have a lot to talk about because this is a really tough time for couples right now. People are really struggling. And, there's a lot of togetherness. There's a ton of stress, not just with the pandemic and with health questions, but with the world in general right now. And what I'm seeing is that there's sort of a barbell effect going on in relationships. A ton of people are really feeling pretty hopeless at the moment, and the togetherness has exposed and made bigger the cracks that were already in their relationship for a variety of reasons. There are some people who are actually able to take the togetherness and the stress and use it as a reason to sort of slow down and listen to each other better and get to know each other. And so what used to be a very fast relationship for them has actually turned down to one that's more considered. And so those people are doing better. But the majority of people that I'm running into, and that may be self-selection, are people who are really struggling. So I want to address that today. I'm going to start by talking about the reasons why people are struggling, and you'll probably recognize many of them in your own relationship. And then I want to spend most of the time on things that you can do in order to both get through the current period and also start to rehab your relationship. So Lily, if you could change the slide, please. The first question is to ask, is your relationship rehabable? And if you're feeling hopeless, this may be a question that you are asking yourself. I want to remind you that this is a stage. It's a long one. We don't know how many years we'll be in a pandemic situation, and with that stress, and of course, a lot of the other stress that's going on at the national stage and even in our local areas, is also longer term, but it is a stage. And so the question is really, how do you continue to build on any gains that you've made, or how can you find the most important areas of your relationship if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed right now, and sort of take out those most important elements and focus in on those things where you get the most leverage in your relationship. And how do you survive the hurts that you're feeling? So that's what I'm going to be talking about. And the first thing I want to talk about is on the next slide, which is understanding what's going on in the pandemic itself and what the stress factors are. And so one of the things that's important to understand is that stress and the worsening of ADHD symptoms are directly related. The more stress there is, the worse the ADHD symptoms get. And that's for a whole variety of reasons, not the least of which is that the sleep habits are upended, that routines are upended. I was just talking with somebody this morning who said, I just got laid off, and I used to count on the structure of work as one of my main ways of managing my ADHD. So those kinds of things are happening. All these external structures and coping routines and things you put into place are all upended when suddenly you're at home, there's no structure, you might not be taking your medications, you probably haven't been exercising as much, you can't go to the gym. A lot of people haven't been able to go outside. The partners of people who have ADHD haven't had time for themselves. So a lot of things are really up in the air. And then there are a lot of additional burdens that we never expected. For example, for dual working parents, not having childcare and having your kids home all the time, and your kids aren't at school, and suddenly you're supposed to be teaching school and working 2 jobs remotely, which might be new. It's very hard to refocus when you're interrupted regularly, which you would be in that situation. So many things that are going on. Depression is going up nationwide, and anxiety and depression are definitely increasing for partners impacted by ADHD. And there are just so many reasons for that. On the next slide, I wanted to talk about boundaries. So one of the issues of being at home all the time is that some of the normal boundaries that we have that we may not be thinking about are no longer available to us. So I'll give you an example of a couple that I've been working with recently. The husband had an emotional affair, which had come out, and they are now both at home. And his wife, who's sort of highly attuned at the moment because of the hurt of the emotional affair, said to me, well, gee, I hear my partner all day long when he's on the phone for work, and he happens to be talking to a coworker woman. And I think to myself, why is he talking to her again? Why does he sound so friendly? And so she normally wouldn't be overhearing what his style is with this person, if this isn't the person he had the emotional affair with. But it is an additional irritant, and it has to do with just the fact that he's working from home instead of working at work, as well as, whether or not, I don't know exactly whether that was appropriate conversation or not, but that's just one example. There are boundaries around movement and freedom. I have a couple that I worked with where both adults got COVID, because the husband went out to multiple grocery stores. He sort of was going out daily. It was his way of dealing with what Ned Hallowell calls the itch of ADHD. So he went out to a grocery store, he got it, he brought it home, he gave it to his wife. At one point when I was talking with them, she was in the basement, he was in another part of the house, and they had 2 kids, 8-year-old and 9-year-old, who were pretty much on their own. They would come to the door and say, so now what do we do? Should we be eating for dinner, and et cetera. And the parents couldn't really help them because they didn't want them to be unsafe. So this itch, this desire to move, is a real problem. You combine it with the executive function issues of ADHD, of not being able sometimes to anticipate what might happen in the future, to visualize the future, and therefore be anxious about it. This is not true of everybody who has ADHD, but for those who do, it's creating a real problem right now around these conversations of, can you keep me safe, et cetera. And then there's a lot of, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, this sort of urgency that comes up when you're under stress. And that's very real. And it can translate into a lot of different ways. I was talking with somebody the other day who said, we're both at home, we're both working, and I really need my husband to be quiet for 4 hours so that I can get some work in the morning. And he just can't manage to do it. And I challenged her a little bit. I said, okay, I understand you need 4 hours of quiet, but why is it that your husband and your children, all of whom have ADHD, are the ones who need to create that quiet? How could you move your office to another part of the house or to the garage? Could you wear headphones, so that they're noise canceling, or so that you just hear what's coming in from your computer and nothing else that's going on around you? So you're thinking about the sort of the necessities of being home without thinking about the reality of ADHD. On the next slide, another issue is that performance needs have increased, right? So we're in a crisis. You expect people to step up, and the opposite has happened because the ADHD symptoms have gotten worse. And so what happens is that trust erodes and concern for the future increases. And finally, another issue on the next slide is a rise in poor coping strategies. I do non-ADHD partner support groups, virtual, and one of the women in one of my recent groups, and that was going on in March, her husband got let go, and he was doing video gaming for 10 or 12 hours a day, having a great time doing it, a lot of fun, but not doing a whole lot around the house. And so it was a real problem for her because she had no idea why he wasn't helping out or what was going on. She felt a lot of resentment about that, right? There's a ton of increased drinking and smoking of marijuana going on, and some marital abuse as a result of those things. Also a lot of dropping out of being responsible and being, doing some of the things that need to happen. Parenting and what I call childing behaviors of that parent-child dynamic, a lot of that's coming back because people don't have the energy or the patience not to get into those habits again. Medications are being interrupted. I know one young woman who couldn't get her medications because her doctor was hosted in a hospital and she couldn't get into the hospital to the office. I've had other people say that their doctors have been out of touch or that they just don't feel they need to take them because they're not at work and they associate medications with work rather than associating medications with being more functional. A lot less exercise, and exercise is a great treatment, a non-medicinal treatment for ADHD. And a lot of anger that just people aren't bothering to control because so many of these other things are going on. So on the next slide, the real question is, okay, so what do you do? Where are you moving from the lemons into the lemonade, if you want to think of it that way, and get your relationship going? And before I move into this section, I want to remind you, because it's important to remember, that you want the same things. Even though you're struggling right now, you want the same things out of a relationship typically. You want to know, for example, that you're loved and cherished. You want to know that you're respected and that you can express yourself without fear, right? So we tend to think of these things as the thing that we want. And as we watch our partners struggling or being angry or whatever, we forget that our partners also want these things. And so that is a good place to start, which is, what are the things in common that we want? We all want a basic sense of security. We want to be respected. We want to be heard. Remember that as the context of thinking about, how do I bring my relationship back? Give your partner essentially the benefit of the doubt on that. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to give you a number of different things to do and some examples of it. And the first is to manage your mindset. And the reason is the context of your relationship is important. The stories that we create around the events that we are experiencing right now are really important. It's really easy to feel hopeless if you just think that this is going to go on forever, et cetera. So if you say, look, the fact that we're struggling right now, the fact that the cracks that we had in our relationship have gotten bigger under this stress means that things will never work. That's one mindset. A different mindset with exactly the same elements is, look, we've learned that we really need to take action together to be able to improve things. We're not strong enough at the moment to manage the kinds of stresses that are coming underneath us. And so it's important to, which one of those do you want to engage with? If you think about, my partner will never get off of his video games, like that woman started out saying that, to, she thought, you know what, actually he's on leave right now from his job. He's kind of taking a vacation while he's on leave. That was much easier for her to think about in terms of being able to move forward. So that helped her. And then because she had that more positive attitude, what happened is she sort of said, okay, fine, it's fine that you're watching the video games and stuff, but also I'd love to spend some time with you, now that she wasn't feeling resentful. And he was much more ready then to get up off the sofa and start to spend time with her. It was part of her mindset that was getting in the way of spending that time together, because he knew she was feeling that way. And so he didn't really want to engage with her. The video games felt better. And the ADHD brain is a reward-focused brain. So the thing that feels good is the thing that's easier to engage with. So if you say, I really don't like my partner, that's one mindset, or my partner's under stress are not reassuring me, that's a different mindset, because there's a qualifier there, which is under stress. And that suggests that A, when you're not under stress, things could get better, and B, the issue to solve there is the stress, right? And some of that stress is actually manageable. You can manage it. So again, thinking about your mindset, not catastrophizing and saying, okay, this is because it's this way now, it's always going to be that way, is a first good step in understanding how to manage the current stress and also move forward into your relationship. And you can even write down some of these, what's my mindset? What am I thinking? What's the story I'm telling myself? And then you can ask yourself, is that real? Is that the only way to look at it? Is there a more positive way to look at it? And then write down the more positive way and think about that for a while and think about, how does that feel to me? Okay, on the next slide, I talked about this sense of urgency that the current crisis gives us, this sort of heightened stresses, heightened anxiety. Anxiety creates urgency. It's part of the biology of anxiety, right? And so we get this sense of like, I have to get this stuff done now. I have to do this stuff. If we're not paralyzed, that's the other version of dealing with anxiety, is just like going into complete paralysis. But this sense of urgency, particularly for non-ADHD partners who are often manager types, okay, I'm going to do something. I got to do it now. That can stave off feelings of helplessness. It can make you feel like you're more in control. The other thing is that because our schedules have changed, and by the way, that's why we're doing it, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it's serving us well. That's the rest of that sentence. And then the second bullet point, or the second dash, is because our schedules have changed, we might expect other things to change as well. I'll give you an example from my own marriage. My husband retired actually pre-pandemic in late 2019. And I was still working full time, in fact, pretty hard. And I was expecting that since he had more time, that he would do more things. He's capable of doing them. He's shown that. And so he agreed that he would be the person to clean the bathrooms, as well as doing the dishes and some other things that he does for us. And so that was great, but he didn't do them. And I got into okay, now what do I do this? Do I parent him? Do I nag him? And we had some arguments about it. And he sort of begrudgingly did these things. And he finally said to me one day, look, I have no intention of doing this stuff. And so I was like, oh, okay, thank you so much. I had this expectation that he would want to just step up. But of course, that's me, right? Those are my expectations and my behaviors. It doesn't have anything to do with whether he wants to step up. So I was putting my own ideas or feelings on him. So just because you're both at home doesn't mean you're going to handle that the same way. A la the guy who was doing the video games and taking the vacation and connecting with people to manage his stress of being unemployed, or my husband saying, no, I'm not really going to do this. And then I could do something different, which in this case was to hire somebody to clean the house and help out and also relieve me of that pressure. So he didn't really have a desire, even though he did have a change in schedule. The question to ask is it really urgent? Is the thing that is helping you feel less helpless actually urgent, or just something that feels good to you, right? And there's a big difference between those two, actually. And the other question is, who's setting the agenda? So in the case of the cleaning of the bathrooms, I was setting the agenda because his schedule had changed. And he went along with it because it was easier than fighting me, but in reality didn't really go along with it and didn't really want to do it. So you have to be very careful to make sure that you continue to maintain equality in terms of who's setting the schedule and who's doing the agenda. And that's an important part of making sure your relationship stays healthy. The third area that I want to talk about on the next slide is rebuilding ADHD support structures. So one of the problems in the pandemic period and in so much time being together or not being at your work or working from home instead of having the structure of going to the office and having your day start at a certain time and all of those things is that there's almost no structure, which is really hard if you have ADHD. It's not a surprise that things are really falling apart for those who have ADHD. I noted that this morning I got an email from ADDitude actually about a new article they have. When normal no longer exists, ADHD brains in free fall. And I think there's going to be a link in the resources section to this article. It's very relevant to what I'm talking about here. And in the article, it talks about 72% of people with ADHD in their most recent pandemic survey feeling emotionally overpowered, and 67% feeling worried or anxious. And part of that is this lack of support structures. So the ADHD brain works in such a way that the inside of the brain, if you want to think of it that way visually, there's a lot of energy, a lot of things going on. It's not particularly good at creating its own structures. You have to create these structures externally to your head. Which is not the way that, for example, my brain works with I'm a natural manager. My brain just does structures without my even thinking about it. So these support structures are really, really important for people with ADHD, these external structures. And some of them, like exercise and sleep, are critical to how the symptoms show up and how severe the symptoms are. But it's also other things as well. And I'm talking about treatment routines in all three legs. I have a treatment model that talks about the different kinds of treatments to help adults understand what the optimal treatment could be for them. And in fact, I lay that out in a number of different places, including at a free treatment ebook that's on my website that I just posted today, the 2020 update for that. So it has all the latest information in it. So you're welcome to go grab that. And that explains all three legs. But these structures, it's not just physiological, medicinal, or exercise or sleep structures. It's also structures around behaviors, calendaring, reminders, making sure that you have, if you're a person who needs space or no interruptions in order to stay focused on something, making sure you have that space. I know there was a man that I was working with who put his office out in their garage because he couldn't handle the interruptions of having the kids around, that kind of thing. So the ability, if you're doing calendaring or you're doing bullet journals, which work great for a lot of people, that combination for a lot of people with ADHD, being able to do that every single night. Even if you don't feel like you've got a lot coming up the next day, still being able to set out what your routine is going to be is useful. You want to be autonomous from each other without endangering people. You don't want to be the guy who went to the grocery store, who brings home COVID and gets his wife sick and who essentially leaves his kids in the kitchen trying to figure out how to cope. But you do want to be autonomous. So it's important that those structures stay in place so that you can have that, and also so that your partner can feel more trust. I want to go on to the next slide, which is my fourth area, which is thinking about boundaries. So again, staying at home has blurred some of the normal ways that we live our lives, and therefore blurred some of the boundaries. When I talk about parent-child dynamics, I'm talking about a lack of boundaries. The non-ADHD or more organized ADHD partner is taking responsibility for like timelines, deadlines, making sure things get done, how things get done, whether things are organized. For the ADHD partner who plays a less a dominant role, so a sort of a secondary role. It's a horrible kind of pattern for partners who are in ADHD-impacted relationships, because it's not at all equal, and it's very unsexy. It's really can kill your relationship. But in any event, one of the things you need to be thinking about is making each person have sort of equal status. And that's an interesting challenge. It usually means that the ADHD partner has to step up with good treatment. The non-ADHD partner has to step back in a transition to step back. You don't just abandon your partner, but you step back and create this relationship, which is about two unique individuals who are very different. That's part of the energy of the relationship, is the fact that you are different. That's part of why you were attracted to each other. But you are two unique people, and you have to negotiate your differences rather than impose a way on each other. And that imposition goes in both directions. If the ADHD partner isn't managing their symptoms, they are imposing those symptoms on everybody else in the family. If the non-ADHD partner is not managing their need to do things in certain ways, or manage the family, then they're imposing their way on the ADHD partner. That's not the way that it needs to happen to be a healthy relationship. So you really need to rebalance the power or the status in the relationship, and that takes very careful thought about what are your boundaries. John Gottman has some good work on boundaries, and I can anybody who writes to me, I'm happy to share that with you as well if you're interested in pursuing that. Living in accordance with your values can help you do that. So, for example, staying respectful is one of the values that I hold dear. And so that leads me to certain kinds of behaviors, including thinking carefully about not being in my husband's space, but also creating space for yourself and taking care of yourself, right? Not letting your partner constantly be directing you. That's important as well. And studying communication techniques and negotiation skills. I like the book Beyond Reason. It's written by the Harvard team for negotiation, but it's really a terrific book, and talks about conflict. Talks about how to negotiate when you have two different people. And there's another skill set which I'm not going to talk about here because I don't have time to do so, but know that it exists, which is developing conflict intimacy skills, which is essentially a conversational style where you are not aggressive when you speak and not defensive when you listen. So all of those things allow communication while also allowing for each person to be unique and strong in their own right. So you want to be advocating. What that does when you allow those two unique individuals to stand on their own 2 feet is that you're advocating for respect, healthy relationships, no aggression, a willingness to listen to each other, the ability to attend to each other. And the only way that you can impact the presence of those things in the relationship is to hold yourself accountable. And then also, of course, to request those things of your partner. That's another part of that. So both people do need to step up, but they have different jobs. And thinking about boundaries helps. Okay, number 5. I talked about attend time. in this last slide, and I didn't say what it was. Attend time is time that you spend together as a couple, focused on each other as a couple. And yes, that's a picture of me and my husband. You don't see a ton of pictures of my husband. He tends to stay on the sidelines. But, you know, we are in a fight right now. And this is actually part of the reason this time period feels so difficult, is because we are fighting. We're fighting for our lives, literally. Particularly if you live in a high COVID area. We're fighting for our lifestyle, and by that I mean our abilities to intermingle with each other, our abilities to be employed, to feel like we have purpose. We're fighting for access to friends and family. You know, a lot of Zoom calls are going on right now. We're fighting against information overload. We're fighting for some of the national stressors that are going on, along with, you know, Black Lives Matter and et cetera. There's just a ton of stuff that we are fighting for right now. Fight, and that part of your brain is different from the connection part of your brain. So we are very much in that primitive fight, flight, flee part of our brain these days a lot. And this anxiety and overwhelm and stress, particularly if there's a lot of stress, takes us right back to that primitive part of our brain. But the relationship is about love and connection. And so while it's tempting to spend a lot of time doing the fight, doing that part that we're just like pushing back against all of this stuff that's coming at us, we actually have to be allocating time to connection. And that's what attend time is. It's remembering why you like each other, why you love to be with each other. And there are many different ways to do it, but you need to schedule it. And you don't need to schedule it as in, okay, we're going to go for a walk on Friday at 2. But it does help to say, okay, you know what? On Friday afternoon, we have a half day for work because it's the summer, and we're going to take from 2 to 5. And we're going to do something, and just schedule that in so you know you block out the time and you're both there, and the distractions of life don't get in the way, whether that's whatever it is you're doing. And then you do something then, whatever it is. So some examples from people that I have been talking with lately. I have a woman in one of my support groups who says she and her husband, who have been not able to get out very much given where they are, have taken to walking the perimeter of their property. And she was very eager to move away from the parent-child dynamics, that sort of uneven dynamics, particularly around emotional issues. So she set herself a policy. We're going to walk these nice long walks, and I am going to invite him to speak, and I am going to be quiet for the first 5 minutes. And she was forcing herself to be quiet. And she had a really interesting discovery. And that was that when she was quiet, her husband was actually willing to speak up, but that she had been inserting herself in her eagerness so much that she didn't create the space for him to be able to do that. So they've been having a very positive experience around that, because he's actually starting to express what his concerns are. And people have a lot of concerns right now. There's a lot to talk about. And so she's been trying to keep it on the emotional realm, and he's been willing. So walking and listening, and people have had picnics in the park because they can't get close together with each other in their house, but they can go out and social distance and still enjoy some socializing. I talked already about setting time aside for each other, holding each other, just remembering to say, I love you at night, to cuddle up, to spoon, whatever you might be able to do, to hold hands when you're going for a walk. That kind of affectionate touch, you may, in all of the things that have been going on, been missing. And it's pretty easy to add it back in. And your partner appreciates it when you make that bid for connection. That's what that's called. The bid, you know, when you reach out to put your arm around your partner or hold their hand, that's a bid for connection. If your partner makes some of those bids, accept it, and think about what kinds you can do. You can also make bids for repair. You will argue during this time, but you can make a bid for repair where you go back and you give your partner a hug after an argument, or you hold their hand, or you apologize, or, you know, there are a lot of different ways to repair. Each couple has their own ways, and you can make those bids for repair. But attend time is really important. That's the time when you focus on being together. The reason I have a biking picture there is that my husband and I do a lot of biking together. Our idea of a fun time is to go out and ride 30 miles. So that gives you some idea. And sometimes that time we don't speak a lot. Sometimes we do speak a lot. We're sort of riding side by side when we can. And I asked my husband one time, I said, why do you think this activity is so connecting for us? Because I was interested in his take on it. He said, well, even if we're not talking, I still am thinking about where you are and what you're doing and what we're experiencing together. I need to avoid not running into you, but also you're just always aware of your partner being there. And which I thought was a really interesting thing. So for us, that's attend time, along with other things, having coffee together, having dinner together with our family right at the moment and talking, taking walks together. All of that is just time for us, and that's very useful. And it's a big healer when you start to think about how to put your relationship back together. Okay, number 6. I want you to think about that things don't have to be consistent. Life is very far from perfect right now. And the reality is things that seem to be in conflict can exist side by side. And we should not only accept that they exist side by side, but embrace the fact that they can sit side by side. Because if you don't do that, your tendency is to say, well, I have to fix everything before I can engage in the positive. That's where we go when we don't embrace the duality of our lives. That does not help you in this kind of a situation, and it also doesn't help you rebuild your relationship. So affection for a partner can live side by side with the fact that your relationship is not perfect and that you need to work on it. But you can express affection for your partner while also still knowing that the relationship needs work. And I hear this all the time from non-ADHD partners where they say, well, I don't feel I can say anything positive because if I say something positive, my partner's going to go on vacation and stop working. And so therefore it's going to get bad again. And that's, they may have had that experience in the past, but the way to avoid that is to be able to say to your partner overtly, hey, look, I really care about you. I have been feeling this fear that if I tell you how much I care about you or how much I like the things that you're doing right now, that, I can see the effort you're putting in. And I'm afraid that if I tell you the positive things, that you'll sort of go, okay, that's fixed and let up. And I don't want that to happen, but I also want to make sure I can express my affection. Your partner will get it. When I have had those conversations openly with couples, the ADHD partner gets it. They just weren't thinking about the fact that when things felt good, they went back to the old way. But once they start thinking about it, then they can do something about it. You can have painful ADHD symptoms and still, that your partner experiences painful, but still be a good person. Those can live side by side. The good person you want to engage with and reinforce the good person part of it so that there's motivation to deal with the painful ADHD symptoms. If everything is negative, nothing feels rewarding. There's no desire to engage. You can still be exhibiting parenting behaviors as a non-ADHD partner, for example, but still also be trying hard. You're not perfect. You can feel overwhelmed easily and still want to engage. And this happens a lot for ADHD partners where they get really overwhelmed and they really want to engage. They just can't, literally can't do it. They freeze up. They get paralyzed. A good way to handle that particular duality is for the ADHD partner to raise their hand and say, I'm starting to feel overwhelmed right now. And when they start to feel overwhelmed and they can notify you of that, the whole conversation can essentially slow down. They can address the overwhelm and open back up and engage. So again, embracing the duality and acknowledging it allows you, in this case, to create an interaction between the two of you, which deals with the overwhelm and allows the engagement, right? A partner who is stressed out or prickly is still a partner who needs love and affection. A person who feels under siege is still a person who needs some fun. So embrace the duality. Don't think of it as we have to fix everything before we can go to the positive. You really you can't fix everything that's going on in your life right now. It's not possible because of the specific things that we've all got going on. So you really almost are forced to deal with the duality. Why not embrace it so that you can work with it rather than against it? Number 7 is to seek help. And there is a lot of help out there. You can obviously seek counseling. And if you do so, please go to somebody who understands ADHD. And there are a number of different ways to find those people, including at CHAD on their website, at Psychology Today on their website. On my website, I've got a list of people that I know of. It's a short list, a shorter list than some of the others, but it's probably more qualified. There are support groups for both ADHD and non-ADHD partners, both locally and more nationally. What you're trying to do is strengthen your empathy and learn communication skills. People think of communication skills as like the be all and end all. It's not. It's a skill set that allows you to go deeper is all, and to get at the stuff that's underneath. And part of that is that re-engaging and strengthening of the empathy. Notice that's so important. I wrote that twice here. I didn't mean to do that, but it is really important. And an understanding of ADHD. There are also please seek help in other areas of your lives as well right now with the pandemic. If you need food support because you're food insecure, because somebody's unemployed or whatever, please seek it out from the local organizations. Ask for financial discounts because people will give them to you, most likely, or at least send you to something that's a lot less expensive. There are a lot of faith organizations that are stepping up right now to support their people. Even basic things like cleaning and housework. It's scary to have somebody in your house in a lot of places. If that person is wearing a mask and if you're not nearby, that still can work in many areas. It depends on the rules and regulations in your area. But it can be a big help to lighten some of the load. And you do want to try to de-stress. And one of the ways to de-stress is lighten the load. Another way is to get more sleep and to get more exercise, and et cetera. And another way to de-stress is to make sure you're making those connections with friends and family. I talked about going out into the park. We used to do what we called cul-de-sac cocktails every Saturday night, where the people in the cul-de-sac would go out into the middle of the street, and we'd all stay as couples 10 feet apart from each other or more. We'd bring our own drinks, bring our own dinners, bring our own chairs. So nobody had to touch anybody. Nobody had to get within 6 feet of each other. And we got to socialize, and it was great. The nice side effect is we really got to know our neighbors a lot better, which we're all very grateful for. Mindfulness training, anger management, those kinds of things can be very useful in this particular environment. I mean, we're really in a marathon right now. We are not in a sprint. And so things that are long lasting, like mindfulness training, really engaging with managing the ADHD treatment, again, around those 3 legs of treatment, managing the emotional dysregulation that comes with ADHD, but also can come with the anger and resentment that can come with living with ADHD in a difficult time. Everybody's responsible for their own anger management and issues. So do seek help. That help is available. Again, ADDitude has a ton of resources for folks, including these expert webinars. I have a ton at my own website at ADHDmarriage.com, specifically for couples. There is a lot of help out there, and mental health professionals like myself are very attuned to the fact that lots of people need help right now. On the next slide, I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. We've had enough destruction right now. Yes, your relationship might not last. You might end up in a divorce situation. But I'm hoping that by thinking of this as a phase, thinking about ways to energize and strengthen and move away out of the ADHD effect dynamics that have been worsened by understanding that the ADHD symptoms are worse now than they typically are, that you'll be able to do better and move into a more positive future. You both still do have the same basic needs, and it's good not to forget those basic needs for being heard, for being respected, for being cherished and loved. I think also that you can really think of it as seeking your personal source of power, even in a very negative national environment. That may mean taking more care of yourself than you have been. If you're in the I have to get things done sense of urgency, I'm going to get rid of feeling helpless by really feeling more doing more stuff. You're probably not taking care of yourself as well as you could. So create some mental and physical me space. Journal if you need to do that. For me, that's mental me space. It's how I work through emotional stuff, is a lot of it is through journaling. And it's very helpful. Create a place where you can go and read a book. Give yourself permission to do it. Make a difference if you're really worried about what's going on out in the world. Make a difference without abandoning your partner. Whether you're sewing masks for people, whether you're giving donations to hospitals, whether you are, learning about racial issues for the first time. My daughter, who has ADHD, has become extremely involved with sending around actionable ways that people can start to think about race differently. That's her response to what's going on in the world right now. And she has encouraged me, and I will do it, to get involved with Check Your Privilege as a way for people who are white, which I am, to learn more about ingrained racial attitudes and things. There are lots of things you can do where you can find purpose and make a difference, even in these very overwhelming times. But give yourself permission to do it. Give yourself permission to seek the positive, to do gratitude work, take the time you need to reconnect with others. It's really hard, but you can expose your vulnerabilities. You can talk about this. You can meditate or do whatever you need to stay calmer. And the next stage on the next slide is really an opportunity, I think, to name your common ground between you, to listen to your partner first and talk second, to identify those most important things that you need in your relationship. Understanding, if you didn't know before, you do now. We can't do everything, and we have to really be focused in on the things that are going to make the biggest change. And opening yourself back up. It's hard to do under the kind of stress that we are under. It's hard to not to be in a defensive posture because so much is coming at us these days. But doing that work to try to calm yourself, to try to make yourself available and open is very useful. And there's more opportunity on the next slide. Part of it comes from the life is short and unpredictable. I learned that a long time ago because I am a cancer survivor. And so you're faced with life is short and unpredictable when you have cancer. And part of that is learning that you are responsible for making each day as good as it can be. So whether that's scheduling time for fun or for the attend time, whether it is finding joy in every single day, doing a gratitude practice, which is one of the things that I do when I'm feeling down or feeling resentful or whatever, I sort of reset myself and say, what am I grateful for? Owning ADHD and its many aspects, if you have it, including making that commitment to manage it. Your day is unstructured and that makes it really hard right now if that's the case for you. But that doesn't preclude the fact that you still do need to manage the ADHD in order to be on that equal footing. And I'll give you a little exercise. I'll sort of leave you with this exercise. One way to open up communication between the two of you right now is a very simple exercise I created for a couple that I was working with, where one of the partners had a real anxiety issue, and a lot of that anxiety was hidden inside. And so at the end of every day, they answered this question. The most important thing you need to know about me today is, it's not really a question, they finished the statement. And so each partner would share the thing, whatever it was. I'm feeling anxious about something. I'm really proud of something. I'm really worried about something. I'm really happy about something, whatever it was. And they found it to be immensely helpful in reconnecting. And it's so simple. And you can do that as well. So to end, you can make any gains that you have made a permanent part of your relationship by prioritizing them in the future. And if you're finding that you're really, really struggling, you also have the opportunity to rehab your relationship. This is a moment in time. And while it's really hard to remember that when we're in the middle of it, nonetheless, that is the case. And the fact that you're struggling right now under the incredible stress that we are all under, and all of the things that are conspiring against couples impacted by ADHD does not mean that you cannot survive in your relationship. So it is possible. It's not that everybody will be able to do it, but it is possible to rehab your relationship. And I wish you very much that you find the resources and the help that you need to do that, as well as the sort of strength of spirit. And with that, I will take questions.
Okay. That was very, very good, Melissa. I love the attend time concept. I really do. Let's see. One woman has asked, can we maybe talk about sex? With all the stress and change, there seems to be simply no space or time for it. Sometimes we all need cuddles, and I'm missing them right now, but the time doesn't seem right. So I guess, can you make some room for intimacy? I guess that's what she's asking.
Yeah, and that's a great question, actually. So that's one of the physical parts of physical touch, which of course is so important. So if you have an ADHD partner, and the symptoms are worse, the distraction is likely going to be worse as well. So when she talks about we don't have the space, we don't have the time, it could be distraction. It could be that you have kids at home, that all the time. It could just be that your lives are particularly busy right now. I think that our relationships are the result of what we set as our priorities, in part, not all, but that's what we set as our priorities is really important. And so I think, advise that you reach out to your partner and just say, I really miss being with you. I miss touching you. I miss the warmth and the comfort that your body brings to me. And I really want just to spend some time so we can touch each other. And, if that's sexual, that's wonderful. If it's not sexual, it's a less sexual thing. I just really would like to add some cuddling or some time together. And again, you can create, that's part of attend time. It's not the only part of attend time. You can schedule a time frame where you can say, okay, so 7 to 9 p.m. on Friday nights is for us. And if you've got a slightly older kid who can watch other kids, if you've got kids, that's great. Don't be embarrassed to go off and sort of, have some private time for yourself. That's okay. And the outcome of that for your relationship will be good enough that it's well worth that. So make that a top priority. And if you're in a situation where you have a non-sexual relationship, which is actually pretty common when couples are really, really struggling, then it's a bigger issue. You need to get at what the things are that are interfering, like anger or frustration or low self-esteem, and change that context. One quick way to do it, it's kind of cheating and it last forever, but one quick way to do it is to just say, you know what, let's just have some fun. Let's drop all that stuff for a while. Let's just have some fun together, and then we can go back to all that stuff. That's a little bit of that duality thing, but not everybody can do that. So,
right. How do you manage when both partners, tips and strategies this person is looking for, when both partners have ADHD? I know that's... So you have some specific challenges. So usually there's a more organized person. Either they're better managing the ADHD, or they're just they have less severe ADHD or whatever, and they tend to take on some of the parenting kinds of roles that non-ADHD partners take on. So the very first thing you have to do in any of these relationships is make sure that you have equal status. But then when both partners have ADHD, one of my favorite strategies, quite frankly, is to delegate stuff to others. If you can afford to get a housekeeper, you should have one. My daughter's in a relationship where both of them have ADHD,
And I have said, you guys are just going to have to understand that one of your basic expenses, like paying for a car or something like that, is paying for some help on the cleaning and making sure that your lives don't get out of order that way. Also, it takes them so long to do that stuff that it's not worth the effort versus paying somebody else to do it. Again, if you can set that aside. The other thing I would say is all of the things that I talked about, getting good sleep, getting exercise, making sure you're keeping up with your medications, making sure that you're managing the emotional dysregulation ×2. The person who is the more organized ADHD person, typically will tell me things like, well, it's really hard for me to do this stuff and my partner doesn't get it because it's, they should. And so it's good to have a gentle conversation around that. Like, okay, even though I'm better than this stuff than you are, this is still really, really hard for me. I really need you to step up. So, it doesn't, it's sort of double. But make sure you have enough support and make sure that you are both on top of all legs of treatment.
Mm-hmm. One woman is asking, she feels like she has to walk on eggshells all the time because she can't discuss difficult topics with her ADHD partner. And she feels like she just has no outlet for her emotions or all the thoughts that are racing through her head. So would there be something you could suggest for her?
Yes. So there are specific types of conversations. So there are a couple different things going on. Most likely the walking on eggshells things comes from a response to emotional dysregulation. The partner gets very aggressive or becomes very agitated very quickly. So that should be set as a target symptom for the ADHD partner, managing that emotional dysregulation. And there are ways to do it, some of which are non-medicinal and some of which are medicinal. This is a physiological thing. It was a big deal at the CHAD 2019 conference where a number of speakers were talking about emotional dysregulation and ADHD. And you can manage that and should manage it as well as you are able. So as an example, some people who move to anger very quickly find that like an antidepressant or something may help them get some pause, slow down a bit, et cetera, and manage their anger better. Others find that mindfulness or meditation helps. So that's one thing. That's on the ADHD partner side of things. There are also interactive strategies between the two partners that can help have these conversations. So one is called learning conversations, where it's a very structured conversation where you go back and forth. There's a speaker and a listener, and there are certain rules, et cetera. That's one strategy. Another is these conflict intimacy conversations. Again, it's a skill set that you develop where you learn how to speak non-aggressively and, very importantly in this case, respond non-defensively. And getting at managing the ADHD better is really useful for this. Also moving away from being in that parenting position where your partner feels like you're constantly telling them what to do. That's a real hot spot for many ADHD adults. If they feel you're bossing them around, they are gone. You are not able to talk with them about what you want to talk with them about. So moving out of that role where you are in the managerial role is really important. And it's hard to do. You're in the managerial role for a reason, typically, and that is that the ADHD partner hasn't been stepping up for a whole variety of reasons, including the ADHD symptoms that are getting in the way. Nonetheless, you still have to get out of that and figure out where it is. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would say is that, and this is sort of the last idea here for this. This is a complex issue you brought up, right, but a very good one. Yeah. Is that don't respond to individual instances that annoy you. Respond to patterns instead. Because when you respond to the instance, the partner's likely to become defensive or inflamed. And they're also going to feel like you're constantly critiquing them, which in fact you are. if in fact you hold your tongue and you look for patterns over a couple of weeks, you can go to your partner at a calm time and use a soft start. Say, hey, there's something I've been thinking about that's been bothering me, and I wanted to talk with you about it. Is this a good time to talk with you? And if the partner says yes, then you can say, well, this thing makes me feel X. It's about you and how you feel, not about how the partner isn't doing something. Mm-hmm. And they're much more likely to be able to hear you. So there are strategies like that where you can talk about a pattern which feels less aggressive than talking about individual instances over and over and over and over again. You're more likely to be heard. So many strategies like that.
Okay, I'm going to try to squeeze one last question in. My ADHD partner does not accept treatment in any manner, but insists that she is perfectly okay. Any solutions for her to start accepting treatment? What can I do? An intervention?
No, you can't really do an intervention because she's already told you that she's not interested in hearing about it. This is a really tough situation. I like to say that it's not ADHD that causes divorce. It's denial that causes divorce. Because if the ADHD partner just continues to say, there's no problem here, there's no problem here, and you feel there's a problem here, you can't fix the relationship. So what I try to do is I try to get people to go at it from different angles than the direct approach. One is, and some people have told me they've had great success taking my first book, which is called The ADHD Effect on Marriage. And there's I think it's second or third chapter, talks about the patterns that ADHD encourages in relationships. And these patterns are incredibly predictable. A huge percentage, 95% of people who have these kinds of relationships have these patterns. And if you pick a few of them that look like your relationship, and importantly, pick some that point to you, not to your partner, because your partner doesn't want to be blamed. That's why they're resisting it. They don't want to be blamed. Point to you as well as partner and say, hey, listen to this. This sounds really familiar. And read about the pattern out loud. You may pique their interest. I've had quite a few people say that that's one way that they can get at it. Mm-hmm. Another is to not deal with the label of ADHD at all at the beginning. Just deal with the things that you feel need to be changed, and focus in on those. If you're going to work with a counselor, you still need to work with a counselor who understands ADHD. But if you're saying, hey, I'm feeling really lonely in this relationship, let's see if we can solve that, then that's a way in. The resistance almost always is around feeling as if they say that ADHD is the issue, then that means they are solely to blame, and the non-ADHD partner or more organized ADHD partner is not to blame. And that's what you need to get away from. You need to acknowledge that you have plenty of things that you need to work on. And that the ADHD label is convenient because it gives you a path, but it doesn't matter what path you take as long as the issues are addressed. So you move it away from specifically being about ADHD.
That's a good strategy. I like that. I think the hour is up. It is up. It's a little more than an hour. Thanks so much for being here, Melissa. That was a great presentation. I enjoyed it and learned a lot. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, Wayne. I appreciate it.
Sure. And thanks to all the attendees for being here. Please join us next Thursday when Russ Ramsey will address coping with anxiety and adult ADHD in the COVID-19 world. It ought to be a good one. Thanks for everyone for being here, and have a great day.